Hey y'all, this here is another video we're doing on another Cobi toy. This is another Cobi toy model, and once again it's still World War II American tanks. This model is of the M36. Now the M36 also has a designated name known as the Jackson. Jackson standing for Thomas Jonathan Jackson, Commanding General of the 2nd Corps of Army Northern Virginia. Also famously known as Stonewall. So in this we're looking at a very specific tank for a very specific mission, which is to kill tanks. The model is very nicely made. It wasn't hard to make this one. I really enjoyed making it. It's of course open top, which most of the I think all the tank destroyers that the Americans had were open top. Here's the side view. As you can see, you've got I'm assuming that's supposed to be a 50 caliber weapon. Turn the trunk there for you a little bit. It came with 2 crew members. You know, pork chop has some type of numerical designation. Turning it around to the front here. Now the sides, like the gas can, the sandbag. I'm not sure what this would be for. And then the back of it, where it would have some type of hitch. Engine compartment, and this section here does lift up, so it shows the engine. See if I can open it up for you guys. Yep. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but the inside you can see the engine compartment. So I've been looking into it, and I'm finding out, like this tank, for example, or this model that's representing the tank that we're talking about, the Jackson only saw service for about a year, from 1944 to 1945. And there's some other American tanks, if you're interested in looking them up, that are supposed to be tank killers, but really they didn't have a good track record. It's not because they couldn't kill a tank. Was it really needed? You know, as I said before, there were already reports of Sherman tanks that could go toe to toe with the majority of the German tanks that were in the field, and the tanks that of course they had the biggest problems with was the Tiger and the King Tiger, etc. Well, there were not many of those tanks made. They didn't have the resources. They didn't have the material to make them. So perhaps tanks like the Jackson and other tanks that we'll talk about, like the Wolverine, maybe they were made for more of a political reason than for a true reason of being in the field. Now, if you're an infantryman and you saw this big boy coming down the street and it was, you were on its side, I'm pretty sure you were mighty happy to see it. Maybe there was a psychological issue to it. Don't know. But I mean, yes, it's nice to see these. If you were an infantryman, it's nice to see these big thunderous tank killers out there. Maybe it bolstered you. Maybe it made you feel better. In a way, that's kind of, you could make a valid argument that the money spent on that is actually a valid thing. But as far as like its performance, and it didn't have a good performance. Not that it didn't do its job. It's just you didn't need really. From what I'm reading, you didn't need these. The tanks that were already in the field from the beginning of the war to the end of the war were already seeing upgrades. The Sherman. I still go back to the Sherman because I still think the Sherman was the finest tank of World War II. So once again, I don't think it boils down to the vehicles. I think it boils down to the tank crews, which I talked about in a previous video. But this is a model of the M36 Jackson. It is my favorite tank destroyer. Yeah, I think it's got more of a history than the other tanks that we're going to talk about, like the M10 Wolverine. But I always go back to the same idea, like why in the world would y'all not have a closed turret? But they didn't. They had open turrets. Maybe it was a weight factor, you know, because like I said before, they had to. They always had to worry about weight because the tanks couldn't be over 20 tons because the cranes couldn't pick up the tanks to put them on the ships. So yeah, just a nice little model. This is the famous M36 Jackson. Be back, Ricky.